Most people misunderstand leadership. They think leadership is when you stand at the front. They think leadership is when you have the authority to give orders. They think leadership begins when you have a title on your business card. But the truth is, many people have the title of leader, but no one truly wants to follow them. And there are also people who have no authority at all, yet when they speak, people listen. Have you ever wondered why that happens? Why are there people who walk into a room and the atmosphere immediately changes? Why are there people with experience, degrees, and who work hard, yet they never become leaders? The difference is not talent. It lies in the principles of leadership that most of us were never taught. Not in school, not at work, and sometimes only when we fail do we begin to understand them. It took me many years to realize something very simple. Leadership does not begin when you lead others. Leadership begins when you start leading yourself. In this video, I will share with you 9 leadership principles that most people are never taught, lessons that can change how you think, how you work, and how you influence the people around you. And stay until the end of the video, because the final principle is something most people misunderstand about leadership, and when you understand it, you will see your role in life in a completely different way. Principle 1. Leadership begins. With self-leadership, there is a very common mistake when people think about leadership. They think leadership begins when you have a team, when you have employees, when you have the authority to give instructions. But the truth is, leadership begins long before anyone works for you. Leadership begins when you learn how to lead yourself. I have met many people who want to become leaders. They want to have more influence. They want people to respect them. They want to be given greater responsibility. But when you observe their lives more closely, you will notice something. They want to lead others, but they have not learned how to lead themselves. They cannot control their emotions. They cannot maintain discipline in their daily habits. They let days pass without clear goals. And that is why real leadership does not begin from the outside. It begins from the inside. Imagine you are trying to steer a large ship across the ocean. If you cannot keep the wheel steady, you cannot expect the ship to go in the right direction. Your life is the same way. If you cannot control your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, then you will not be able to lead anyone. I remember the early years when I began to become interested in personal development. I read books, I attended seminars, I listened to successful people talk about leadership, and I thought leadership was a special skill, something reserved only for people with strong personalities. But after some time, I realized something very different. Leadership is not a secret skill. It is a series of small disciplines repeated every day. The discipline of waking up on time, the discipline of keeping promises to yourself, the discipline of finishing what you started. Those things may seem small, but those small things build the character of a leader. Think about someone you truly respect. Maybe it is an entrepreneur. Maybe it is a great manager. Maybe it is a mentor in your life. What makes you trust them? Not because they say big things, but because you see them living according to what they say. They have clear standards. They have discipline. They have consistency in their actions. And that is the foundation of leadership. A leader does not only talk about responsibility, they live with responsibility. A leader does not only talk about discipline, they practice discipline every day. I once made the same mistake that many people make. I thought that when I had bigger opportunities, I would become more disciplined. But life taught me a different lesson. Opportunity does not create discipline. Discipline creates opportunity. When you begin managing your time well, people start trusting you more. When you keep your promises, people start giving you greater responsibilities. When you hold high standards for yourself, people begin to see you as a leader, not because you ask them to, but because they naturally feel it. Leadership is not really a title. It is a force of attraction. When your character becomes strong enough, your influence naturally appears. And here is the interesting part. Most of the people who become the strongest leaders do not start by trying to lead others. They start by upgrading themselves. They read books when no one asks them to. They learn when no one checks on them. They practice discipline when no one is watching. And over time, something very natural happens. People begin coming to them for advice. People begin trusting them with greater responsibilities. And one day they realize that they have become a leader, not because they were seeking power, but because they built character. I learned a very simple lesson on this journey. Leadership does not begin by leading others. Leadership begins by leading yourself every day. Every morning you wake up on time. Every time you finish work when no one is supervising. Every time you choose discipline instead of comfort. You are training a very important skill. You are training self-leadership. And when your self-leadership becomes strong enough, leadership with others will come naturally. But that is only the first step, because even when you can lead yourself, there is still another important lesson that most people misunderstand about leadership. And that lesson leads us to the next principle, a principle that can completely change how you see the role of a leader. Leadership is not power, it is influence. Principle 2. Leadership is not power, it is influence. There is a very big misunderstanding about leadership. Many people believe leadership is power. They think that when you become a leader, you have the right to give orders. You have the right to control. You have the right to decide everything. But if you observe truly effective leaders, you will notice something interesting. The strongest leaders rarely need to give orders. They do not need to force people. They do not need to control every detail. And that happens because real leadership is not power. Leadership is influence. I have worked with people who had very high titles. They had large offices. They had the authority to sign decisions. They had the power to fire employees. But when they walked into a meeting room, the atmosphere became tense. Everyone stayed quiet. No one spoke their true thoughts. No one really wanted to do more than the minimum. That is not leadership. That is authority. Authority can make people work because they have to, but influence makes people work because they want to. And the difference between those two things is huge. Imagine two managers. The first manager always gives orders. Do this, finish that. I want the report before 5. His employees will work, but they will only do enough to avoid trouble. The second manager is different. He explains the vision. He listens to everyone else's ideas. He helps the team understand that their work matters. When that leader says, we need to finish this, his team does not just work, they commit. And that is the power of influence. People follow a title, but they commit to a leader. A title may make people listen to you for a while, but only influence makes them trust you in the long term. I remember once observing a very successful entrepreneur. He was not someone who talked a lot. He was not someone who impressed people with big speeches. But when he walked into the room, people naturally listened. Not because they were afraid of him, but because they respected him. They knew he kept his promises. They knew he worked hard. They knew he held high standards for himself. Influence is built that way, not through words, but through character. A leader cannot demand respect. They must earn it. And the interesting thing is that influence is often built in very small moments. When you keep a promise, when you stand with your team during difficult times, when you take responsibility instead of blaming others, each of those small actions is like a brick. Over time, those bricks build your credibility. And credibility is the foundation of influence. If you want to become a real leader, remember one thing. You do not need to become the most powerful person in the room. You need to become the most trustworthy person in the room. When people trust you, they start listening to you. When they listen to you, they begin to respect you. And when they respect you, your influence begins to grow. I once made a mistake that many people make. I thought leadership meant controlling more decisions, controlling more people, controlling more results. But over time, I realized something very important. Real leadership is not control. It is inspiration. A good leader does not force others to work. They make others want to become better. They make people want to grow. They make people want to contribute more. And that is a very powerful form of influence. A strong leader does not need to remind people of their power. Their presence already says everything. When they speak, people listen. When they share a vision, people want to join. And when they face difficulty, people are willing to stand with them. That is real leadership. But influence does not only come from character. It also comes from another ability every leader must learn. The ability to make decisions. Because in life, there will be moments when people look at you and wait for one thing. Not words, not promises, but a decision. And that is why the next leadership principle is so important. A principle that many people are afraid to face. Leadership means making decisions even when you do not feel ready yet. Principle 3. Leaders make decisions before they feel ready. There is a moment that most people fear. It is the moment when you have to make a decision, but you are not sure whether you are right. You do not have enough information yet. You have not seen the full picture. And a part of you wants to wait a little longer. Wait for more data. Wait for more experience. Wait for more certainty. But leadership does not work that way. Leadership often appears in moments when certainty does not exist. I have observed many people throughout my career. Some of them are extremely intelligent. They read a lot. They analyze very deeply. But they have one problem. They cannot decide. They want everything to be perfect before they act. They want to be sure that their decision will be correct. But life does not give us that guarantee. Life only gives us the opportunity to choose. And in many situations, not deciding is more dangerous than making the wrong decision. Imagine a ship on the ocean. The sea begins to rise. The wind becomes stronger. The captain has two choices. He can wait. Wait to see which direction the storm will move. Or he can act immediately. Adjust the course. Change the speed. Prepare for what is coming. If he waits too long, the ship may already be in the center of the storm. Leadership in life is the same way. There are moments when the people around you are looking at you, not to hear a speech, but to see how you decide. A leader is not someone who is always right. A leader is someone who is willing to decide. I remember an entrepreneur I observed for many years. He was not the smartest person in the room, but he had one very special quality. He decided faster than most people. When an opportunity appeared, he acted. When a problem appeared, he solved it. When the situation changed, he adjusted. He did not try to predict everything. He believed in a simple principle: decide, adjust, learn. Decide, adjust, learn. That is how leadership grows. Many people are afraid to make decisions because they fear making mistakes. But the interesting thing is that good leaders understand one thing. Mistakes are not the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous thing is prolonged hesitation. Hesitation loses opportunities. Hesitation loses the trust of the team. Hesitation makes people feel there is no direction. I experienced this in my own life. There were times when I knew I needed to act, but I waited. I thought that if I thought a little longer, things would become clearer. But often what happened was, the opportunity had already passed. And that lesson taught me something. Leadership is not about knowing every answer. Leadership is about being willing to take responsibility for your decisions. When a leader makes a decision, they do not only think about the result, they think about responsibility. They understand that if the decision is wrong, they will learn and adjust. But they do not let the fear of mistakes stop them from acting. A good leader is like a driver on a long road. You cannot see the entire road. You can only see a short distance ahead, but you keep driving. You adjust the steering wheel. You adjust the speed. And little by little, you move closer to your destination. Leadership is the same way. You do not need to see the entire future. You only need enough courage to keep moving forward. A strong leader understands that a decision is not the end point. It is the beginning of the learning process. When you decide, you receive feedback from reality. You see what works. You see what needs to change. And each decision helps you become a better leader. But when you do not decide, you learn nothing. You only stay still. And life rarely rewards people who stay still. I often tell young people something very simple. Do not wait until you feel completely ready. If you wait for that feeling, you may wait a very long time. Leadership grows when you act before you feel perfect, because that action itself creates growth. But there is another thing a leader must learn. Making decisions is one thing. Seeing the future before others is a completely different skill. And that is exactly what the next principle is about. A quality that most great leaders have. They do not only react to the present, they see the future earlier than others. Principle 4. Leaders see the future earlier than others. There is a very interesting quality that most good leaders have. They see the world differently from the people around them, not because they are smarter, not because they are luckier, but because they have the habit of thinking a little further ahead. Most people focus on today. They think about today's work. They think about today's problems. They think about what needs to be finished this week. And that is completely normal. But leaders often think differently. They do not only look at the present, they look at the direction things are moving. They ask questions like, where will this lead in 3 years? How will this trend affect the market? If we continue in this direction, what will happen? Leadership is always connected with vision, not a vague vision, but the ability to see small signals that others overlook. Imagine you are standing on a high hill. The people in the valley can only see the road directly in front of them, but from above, you can see the entire road. You see the curves. You see the slopes. You see the obstacles ahead. That is how a leader thinks. Not because they are in a higher position, but because they take the time to climb the hill of thinking. I once met a very successful entrepreneur. While everyone else in his industry focused only on this month's sales, he talked about changes that might happen in the next 5 years. At first, many people thought he was thinking too far ahead. But a few years later, the things he predicted began to happen, not because he could see the future, but because he paid attention to small signals, changes in customer behavior, changes in how the market operates, changes in how people think. Good leaders spend a lot of time observing. They observe how things change. They observe how people respond to those changes. And over time, they begin to see patterns. Those patterns help them understand something very important. The future rarely appears suddenly. It begins with small signals. A new habit, a new trend, a new way of thinking. Most people do not notice those signals, but leaders do. And that helps them prepare earlier. A leader does not only ask, "What do we need to do today?" They ask, "What do we need to prepare for?" I have seen many companies struggle not because they lack talent. They struggle because they react too late. They wait until the market changes before adjusting. They wait until a problem appears before looking for a solution. But strong leaders often do the opposite. They prepare before the problem becomes obvious. It is like planting a tree. If you plant a tree today, you will not have shade immediately. But a few years later, that tree can become a place of shade for many people. Leadership is the same way. The decisions you make today may not create results immediately, but they are building the future. I learned a very important lesson from the leaders I respect. They spend time thinking, not thinking about small tasks, but thinking about direction. They ask themselves, are we moving in the right direction? If we continue like this, where will we be in 5 years? If we change strategy today, what might happen? Questions like these can change the entire future of an organization. But to ask those questions, you need a habit. The habit of stepping away from the busy rhythm of life. Most people are too busy to think. They run from one meeting to another. They solve one problem after another. And in that process, they do not have time to look ahead. But real leaders understand that if you do not spend time thinking about the future, you may accidentally walk into a future you do not want. Vision is not a mysterious gift. It is the result of observing, thinking, and asking the right questions. And when you begin developing that ability, you will realize something interesting. You are no longer just reacting to life. You begin designing your direction, but even when you can see the future, there is still another critical skill every leader must learn. Because a vision only has value if you can help others understand it and believe in it. A leader must not only see the road ahead, they must communicate that road to the people around them. And that is exactly what the next principle is about. Leadership is not only vision, leadership is also powerful communication. Principle 5. Leadership requires powerful communication. A leader may have a great vision. They may see opportunities before others. They may clearly understand the direction of the future. But if they cannot communicate it, that vision will only exist in their mind. Leadership is not only seeing the road ahead. Leadership is the ability to help others see that road with you. And that only happens through communication. I have met many very intelligent people. They have good ideas. They have clear plans. They have reasonable strategies. But their teams are still confused. Employees do not understand the goal. People work in different directions. And in the end, the results are not what they expected. The problem is not the wrong strategy. The problem is weak communication. A strong leader does not only think clearly, they speak clearly. They help everyone understand where we are going, why we are going in that direction, and what role each person plays in that journey. When communication is clear, confusion disappears. And when confusion disappears, the team's energy begins to focus. I remember a story about a manager I once observed. His company had a very talented team, but for many months their results did not improve. Everyone worked hard, but there was no clear progress. One day, he held a meeting. Not to criticize, not to create pressure. He only did one simple thing. He drew a picture on the board of the company's future. He explained where we are, where we want to go, and what needs to change to reach that point. After that meeting, something interesting happened. There was no new strategy, no new employees, but the team's performance began to change. Because, for the first time, everyone clearly understood the goal. Clarity creates motivation. When people understand the reason behind their work, they work with a different level of energy. A good leader understands that communication is not only speaking. Communication is connection. A leader does not only deliver information, they deliver meaning. They help people see that their work is not just a daily task. It is part of something bigger. But powerful communication is not only about speaking clearly. It is also about listening deeply. Many leaders think their role is to speak. They speak in meetings. They speak in strategy. They speak in instructions. But the best leaders I have ever met have a different habit. They listen. They listen to the team's ideas. They listen to problems that have not been spoken. They listen to small things others might overlook. And the interesting thing is that when you truly listen, people feel respected When people feel respected, they become more open. They share more. And that helps the leader understand their organization more clearly. Communication is truly a two-way road. Leaders speak to create direction, but leaders listen to understand reality. I once made this mistake. There were times when I thought that because I was responsible, I had to have all the answers. I spoke more than I listened. But over time, I realized that the best leaders often ask more questions than they give answers. They ask, "What do you think about this problem? What do you see that we might be missing? What approach do you think is best for solving this situation?" Those questions do not make a leader weaker. On the contrary, they make the team stronger. Because leadership is not about proving you are smarter than others. Leadership is about creating an environment where the best ideas can emerge. And communication is the tool that creates that environment. But there is one more thing a leader's communication must do. It must build trust. If your team does not trust you, your words will lose their value. But if your team trusts you, sometimes even one short sentence can change the energy of the entire room. Trust is built over time, through honesty, through consistency, through a leader saying what they believe and doing what they say. Powerful communication is not about big speeches. It is clarity, sincerity, and consistency. But even if you have vision and communication skills, there is still a major challenge every leader must face. Because leadership is not only tested when things are going well, leadership is truly tested when things become difficult, when pressure increases, when a crisis appears, when people begin to feel uncertain. In those moments, every eye turns toward the leader, not to hear strategy, but to see one very important thing, whether that leader can remain calm. And that is exactly what the next principle is about. Leadership is not only vision and communication. Leadership is also the ability to stay calm when pressure appears. Principle 6. Leadership is calm under pressure. Leadership is not truly tested when everything is going well, when sales are increasing, when everything is running smoothly, when your team is getting good results. During those times, almost anyone can look like a good leader, but real leadership is revealed when pressure appears, when things begin to go wrong, when the plan does not go as expected, when the people around you begin to worry. In those moments, your team is not only looking for solutions, they are looking for stability, and the person they look to is the leader. I once witnessed a very interesting situation in a company. A major project ran into serious problems. The deadline was approaching. The client began applying pressure. The team started to feel tense. In the meeting room, the atmosphere grew heavy. People spoke faster. The volume of voices increased. A few people began blaming others. But the leader of that team did one very simple thing. He did not yell. He did not panic. He did not look for someone to blame. He simply said calmly, "All right, let's look at the situation clearly." He began breaking the problem down. What is happening? What can we control? What needs to be solved immediately? Within a few minutes, the energy in the room changed. Not because the problem disappeared, but because the leader stayed calm. A leader is like the thermostat in the room. If the leader panics, the whole team will panic. If the leader loses control, the whole team will lose control. But if the leader remains steady, people begin to feel that the situation can still be solved. I often say that a leader's emotions spread faster than any strategy. A calm leader can create confidence for the entire team. On the other hand, a tense leader can cause everyone to lose direction. That is why self-leadership, the thing we talked about in the first principle, is so important. You cannot stay calm in a crisis if you have not learned how to manage your emotions. Pressure has a very interesting way of revealing who we really are. When everything is smooth, we can appear confident. But when pressure appears, our real reaction is exposed. A strong leader is not someone who does not feel pressure. They feel pressure just like everyone else. But they do not let pressure control their actions. They pause. They breathe. They look at the situation clearly. I remember one time in my career when everything seemed to be falling apart at once. An important plan failed. A major opportunity disappeared. And some people around me began to doubt our direction. At that moment, I realized something. If I lost my calm, the people around me would lose theirs too. But if I remained steady, I could help them refocus. Leadership in those moments is not about finding answers immediately. Leadership is about creating space to find answers. A calm leader helps the team think more clearly. When people panic, they react. When people are calm, they think. And thinking always creates better solutions. A good leader understands that their emotions are a signal to the whole team. If the leader appears hopeless, the team will lose confidence. If the leader appears confident, the team will find hope. But a leader's calm does not come from pretending to be strong. It comes from a deep belief. the belief that every problem can be solved, the belief that every difficulty contains a lesson, the belief that leadership is not about avoiding difficulty, but about leading people through difficulty. Imagine a ship in the middle of a storm. The passengers do not know exactly which direction the ship will go. They do not fully understand the weather or the ocean currents. But they look at the captain. If the captain remains calm, the passengers feel reassured. If the captain panics, fear spreads across the ship. Leadership in life is the same way. You cannot always control the storm, but you can control how you respond to it. And how you respond will affect everyone around you. But leadership is not only about staying calm in a crisis. It is also something deeper, because the greatest leaders do not only focus on succeeding for themselves, they focus on helping the people around them succeed. Leadership is not asking, "What can I achieve?" Leadership is asking, "How can I help my team grow?" And that is exactly what the next principle is about. A principle that completely changes the way we see leadership. Real leadership is service. Principle 7. Leadership means serving the team. There is a very interesting paradox in leadership. Many people think that when you become a leader, you will be at the top. You will have more power. You will have more control. You will have more benefits. But the greatest leaders I have ever observed think in a completely different way. They do not see leadership as a position to receive more. They see leadership as a responsibility to give more. Real leadership does not begin with the question, "What can I gain from this position?" Leadership begins with the question, "How can I help the people around me succeed?" When you begin thinking that way, everything changes. The team is no longer a group of people working for you. They become people whose growth you are responsible for. I once met a manager whose team worked with a very special kind of energy. They did not work only for salary. They did not work only out of duty. They worked with a sense of pride. And when I observed their leader, I realized something very clearly. He spent most of his time helping his team grow. He asked his employees questions like, "What do you want to become better at? What skill do you want to learn in the next year? How can I help you go further?" Those questions have a very powerful effect. They make people feel that they are not just a small part of the system. They are people being invested in. A leader serves their team in many different ways. Sometimes it is through guidance. Sometimes it is by protecting the team from outside pressure. Sometimes it is by creating opportunities for them to grow. But above all, leadership serves by lifting others up. A weak leader tries to keep power for themselves. A strong leader tries to share power. I remember a story about a successful entrepreneur. When his company began growing quickly, many people advised him to hold tighter control. They said he should keep every important decision to himself. But he did the opposite. He began training new leaders within the organization. He gave them responsibility. He gave them opportunities to experiment. And gradually, his company did not have just one leader. It had many leaders. That is the power of servant leadership. You do not try to become the strongest person in the room. You try to create a room full of strong people. Leadership in this way has a very interesting effect. When your team grows, your organization grows. When the people around you become better, the overall results become better. But to truly serve the team, a leader must have one very important quality. That is humility. A leader must be willing to set aside their ego. They must understand that the team's success matters more than how good they look. I have seen many leaders fail because they were too focused on proving they were right. They wanted to be the smartest person in the room. They wanted to be the one with the answer to every question. But leadership is not an intellectual competition. Leadership is a journey of developing people. A strong leader understands that sometimes their role is not to provide the answer. Their role is to help others find the answer. And when you do that, something very interesting happens. Your team begins to feel more confident. They begin to think more independently. They begin to contribute more. Servant leadership does not make the leader weaker. It makes the whole organization stronger. A leader who serves is like a gardener. They do not try to become the tallest tree in the garden. They care for the soil. They water it. They create the conditions for other trees to grow. And over time, the whole garden becomes green and flourishing. Leadership is the same way. When you invest in the growth of others, you are investing in the future of the organization. But serving the team does not mean lacking standards. A serving leader still maintains very high standards. They encourage growth. But they also require discipline. Because without discipline, even the most talented teams can lose direction. And that is exactly what the next principle is about. Leadership is not only influence, not only vision, not only service. Leadership also requires a foundation that every leader must build. That foundation is discipline. Principle 8. Leadership requires discipline. If you observe truly steady leaders in life, you will notice a very clear common trait. They have discipline, not only discipline at work, but discipline in the way they think, the way they act, and the way they hold standards for themselves. Discipline is one of the least talked about things in leadership because it is not glamorous. It does not create dramatic stories. It is simply small choices repeated every day. But those small choices create the foundation for leadership. Remember this. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Many people have goals. They want success. They want growth. They want to become leaders. But between desire and results, there is always a gap. That gap is filled by discipline. I have met many very talented people. They have great ideas. They have powerful energy. They have big vision. But after some time, they are still standing in the same place. Not because they lack opportunities, but because they lack consistent discipline. Discipline is not doing something big once. Discipline is doing the right things even when you do not feel like doing them. Waking up a little earlier. Reading a few more pages of a book. Finishing the work even when no one is checking. Those things may seem small, but over time, they accumulate. Like interest in a bank, a small deposit every day may seem insignificant. But after many years, it can become a major asset. Discipline works the same way. A leader does not build credibility through one single action. Credibility is built through hundreds of small actions. When you keep your promises, when you finish work on time, when you maintain standards even when no one is watching, those things create a very clear image in the eyes of others. They know they can trust you, and trust is the foundation of leadership. I once saw a very talented team fail for a simple reason. Their leader lacked discipline. He had good vision. He had strong communication skills, but he often changed decisions. He was not consistent with his standards. And over time, the team began to feel lost. Leadership is not only inspiring words, leadership is consistency in action. Discipline creates that consistency. A disciplined leader is like a precise clock. People know they can rely on it. They know the standards will not change with emotions. They know the direction of the organization will not shift because of short-term pressure. Discipline also helps a leader stay focused. In today's world, many things try to pull our attention in different directions. There are new opportunities. There are new ideas. There are problems that need immediate solutions. A leader without discipline is easily pulled into everything. They start many projects but never finish them. They change strategy too quickly. And the result is that the organization loses consistency. But a disciplined leader knows how to keep the main thing in focus. They understand what truly matters. And they keep the team's energy focused on it. Discipline is also connected to something very important in leadership. That is personal standards. A strong leader sets high standards for themselves before they set standards for others. If the leader arrives late, the team will think being late is acceptable. If the leader is not well prepared, the team will think preparation is not important. But when the leader maintains high standards, the team will naturally raise its own standards. Leadership always begins with example. People do not only listen to what a leader says, they observe what a leader does. I learned a very important lesson in life. Discipline feels difficult at first, but lack of discipline is even more difficult. Discipline may require you to sacrifice comfort today, but lack of discipline may cost you for many years. Leadership requires us to choose the harder path, the path of high standards, the path of responsibility, the path of discipline. But the reward of that path is very great. It creates respect, it creates trust, and it creates the foundation for real influence. But even when you have influence, vision, communication, and discipline, there is still one final thing that many people misunderstand about leadership. This determines whether your leadership only exists in the present or creates lasting influence. Because real leadership is not only about leading people today, real leadership is about creating new leaders. And that is the final principle. Principle 9. Leadership is building other leaders. There is a very big misunderstanding about leadership. Many people think leadership is about standing at the front. They think a leader is the one who leads, the one who makes decisions, the one people follow. But the greatest leaders in history have a very different way of thinking. They do not measure their leadership by the number of people following them. They measure leadership by the number of new leaders created. A weak leader creates followers. A strong leader creates other leaders. The difference between those two things is huge. An organization with only one leader is often very fragile. Every decision has to go through one person. Every responsibility is placed on one person, and when that person leaves, the organization begins to lose direction. But an organization with many leaders is different. Responsibility is shared, ideas are multiplied, and growth becomes sustainable. I once met a very successful entrepreneur. When his company was still small, he was the one making almost every decision. He controlled everything. He worked very long hours every day. At first that worked, but when the company began growing quickly, a problem appeared. He could not be everywhere at once. Every decision had to wait for him. Every problem needed him to solve it. And eventually he realized something very important. If he wanted the company to keep growing, he had to change the way he viewed leadership. Instead of trying to become the strongest person in the organization, he began focusing on developing new leaders. He trained managers. He shared experience. He gave them real responsibility. At first it was not easy. There were mistakes. There were imperfect decisions. But over time, something very interesting happened. Those people began to grow. They became more confident. They began making better decisions. And his organization began growing faster than ever before. That is the power of real leadership. Leadership is not about holding on to power. Leadership is about multiplying capability. A real leader is not afraid when others become good. They are happy when it happens, because they understand that the success of the team is the success of the leader. I once observed two very different kinds of leaders. The first kind of leader always wants to be the smartest person in the room. They keep information to themselves. They control every decision, and they feel uncomfortable when others shine. The second kind of leader is different. They share knowledge. They encourage others to grow. They create opportunities for the team to experiment and learn. And over time, you will see the difference very clearly. The organization of the first leader often stays stuck in place. The organization of the second leader often grows powerfully. Because real leadership is like a candle. When you use your candle to light other candles, the light in the room does not decrease. It increases. Great leaders understand that their legacy is not found in what they achieve for themselves. Their legacy is found in the people they help develop. A leader may build one company, but if they train new leaders, those leaders may build many other companies. A leader may influence one generation, but if they develop new leaders, their influence may last for many generations. Real leadership is not only personal success. Leadership is lasting influence. I learned a very important lesson from the leaders I respect most. They always make time to mentor others. They share experience. They ask questions. They help younger people develop their leadership thinking. And the interesting thing is that when you help others become leaders, you also become a better leader. You learn how to explain more clearly. You learn how to be more patient. You learn how to see people not only through who they are now, but through their potential. Leadership in this way becomes a journey of continuous growth, not only for the team, but for yourself. And when you look at leadership from this perspective, you realize something very profound. Leadership is not a destination. It is a journey where every day you learn how to lead yourself better, influence others more positively, and help more people around you grow. And when you do that for many years, something very interesting will happen. You will look back and realize that your influence has spread farther than you ever imagined. Not because you sought power, but because you helped others become stronger. And that is the essence of leadership. Leadership is not a title. It is not a position on your business card. It is not the right to give orders to others. Leadership is a process that begins from within. In this video, we have gone through 9 principles that very few people have ever taught us about leadership. Leadership begins when you learn how to lead yourself. It grows when you understand that influence matters more than power. It becomes stronger when you dare to make decisions, even when you do not feel completely ready yet. A leader learns how to see beyond the present. They learn how to communicate clearly. They remain calm when pressure appears. They serve their team instead of only seeking personal benefit. They build discipline every day. And finally, they understand that real leadership is not about creating followers. Real leadership is about creating new leaders. When you begin to see leadership that way, everything changes. You no longer focus on proving yourself. You focus on developing people. You do not only think about your own success. You think about the influence you can create for the people around you. And over time, that influence itself will become your legacy. Now, I want to ask you a question. Among the 9 leadership principles we just talked about, which principle made you think the most? Share it in the comments below. I truly want to know what is resonating with you in your growth journey. And if you feel these lessons help you see life more clearly, press like and subscribe to continue this journey with me. Because on this channel, We do not only talk about success, we talk about principles that help you become a better version of yourself every day. I truly appreciate that you stayed until the end of this video. And remember one thing, the challenge of leadership is to be strong, but not rude, be kind, but not weak. Use today wisely, because every great leadership begins with one small decision.